everyone. Thank you so much for worshiping with us today at Trinity Baptist Church online.
We miss seeing your faces in person at our regular site in New York, but we encourage you to continue to seek God, fill yourselves up with His Word and Spirit, and lift up your praises to Him even in this season that we're in.
In just a moment, we will enter into a time of worship, but before we do, we'd like to remind you to please come visit us online at trinityny.org, where you can get to know a little bit more about our community and how God is working in and through us here in the city.
Also, check out our COVID-19 page where you can find out how to join our online small groups, fellowship events, and prayer gatherings.
On the same site, we've provided some resources on how you can support our local community during this time of need.
Finally, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel in case you've missed any of our previous Sunday services and would like to catch up on them.
Thanks again for being with us, and now let's enter into a time of worship.
I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy for all my days. Oh yes, I will. Yes, we sing yes to you. I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yeah, yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy for all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, and nothing will stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, and nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, and nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, and nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy for all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will. Amen. darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father. Praise the Father. Praise the Son. Praise the Spirit. Three in one. God of glory, majesty. Praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming, and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Amen. Thank you, God. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. Come on. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not need and shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Yeah. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Come on. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings. Hallelujah, Lord.
Hi. Today's scripture is from Daniel 6:13 through 18. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of the nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. This is the word of the Lord.
Hi, welcome to Trinity Baptist Church. My name is Pastor Brian, and I have to say I am so incredibly thankful to actually mean welcome to Trinity Baptist Church. Here we are in our beautiful sanctuary, but I do have to say this, it is a little weird being in a mostly empty room here today. In fact, this whole season has been kind of weird, and once you feel like you get used to one normal, it's like all of a sudden it shifts. And in fact, now we're getting used to a new normal and to a reopening. And particularly, I was joking with my wife saying I would just feel so much better if you came during the message and like held my cell phone right in front of my face, just for some sense of familiarity, right? All of us have gone through just an incredible amount of transition. And yet we're still transitioning again. And I want to talk today just briefly a little bit about how we do that as a church with grace, with humility, and with wisdom. Because here's some of the tension, right? We've been in a pressure cooker for some time, and now we're starting to hit some new roadblocks, some new barriers about how are we supposed to think and interact with our culture in general, particularly when it comes down to some, inflammatory issues like how are we reopening the church? When are we reopening the church? What will it look like when we reopen the church? How do you balance individual freedoms and religious rights that are enshrined in this country with a concern for the whole, a respect for the law of the land, and people land on a whole lot of different wavelengths within the spectrum, right? We've seen in the news highly politicized versions of what does it look like, how the state is interacting with the church, and it leaves us in this space where we're needing to process well. What does it mean to live in a culture to express our faith when it might be going against certain grains, whether that's the official law or whether that's certain interest groups and parties that have strong kind of political ties? It's very relevant for today, and because of that, Daniel 6 is actually incredibly relevant for today, because if you've been tracking with us through our series in the book of Daniel, you know that Daniel 6 is the story of Daniel and the lion's den, okay? This is like one of the most famous stories out of the entire book. In fact, if we did a poll and just asked the question, book of Daniel, what do you know? Lion's Den is going to be what comes out of most people's mouth, right? It's such a famous story. It's incredibly memorable. It's something that's easy to teach kids about how God protects those who are faithful to him. But I have to say this, when we step back and we look at the whole arc of Daniel chapter 6, what we realize is this isn't just a story about Daniel and living in the lion's den. That's actually not the central point of the chapter. It's an incredible point, but that's not the main point. The main point is actually, how does Daniel survive life in the royal court? Not how does he survive in a pit with lions for one night, but how does he live this life in a culture where personal religious convictions and practices are in contrast with the state or with the law of the land. And how do you navigate when you find yourself at odds with this? And I feel like this is so incredibly important for us today because we are in a space where people are feeling so many things. Some are feeling relief, some are feeling anger, even just as far as how we reopened. Some people are so excited to be back here today, and if they could be that person right in the front row, they would. And there's other people in other churches that are saying, we're not going to open back up until we've got a vaccine. And it's all over the map. How do we, whether it's this issue or the many issues that face us in life, where it feels like maybe our faith is putting us at loggerheads with the culture or the state, how do we live that out? And I'll give a bit of a hint and say this. It's not an easy 1, 2, 3. It actually requires this sense of wisdom to be able to understand what is happening around us and to be able to navigate it well. This is so critical for us this morning, church, not just in the season we've been in. We're experiencing new challenges. And how do we reintegrate back into life and all the priorities of everybody? How does that work in a way that honors Jesus and helps all of us thrive? That is what we're here to discuss this morning. And I pray that God will give us wisdom and humility to do it well. Turn with me this morning to Daniel chapter 6, as we talk about Daniel in the royal court, not Daniel in the lion's den, as maybe the top of your chapter heading says. Let me start by reading this for us. Daniel 6, verse 1. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might not suffer any loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the high officials and the satraps sought to find ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they could not find any ground for complaint or fault, because he was faithful and no error of fault was found within him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God." Now, I think this is an amazing way to start here, because we start in this scene that sounds a little mundane in the beginning. It's kind of how is the government in Babylon now under Cyrus administered. And so here's this, these people are over this and they have direct reports and then they have a direct report. But apparently Daniel was just doing such an incredible job that he was about to be made kind of the head person underneath the king himself, who just had an incredible amount of authority. And you have these other people within the royal court that are frankly feeling jealous. They're feeling very jealous of his success. We'll see a little bit later in the chapter, there's definitely some xenophobia. There's anti-Semitism that's wrapped up in this. They're very much against Daniel, but they don't know how to do it get rid of him in a way that makes sense. So they do this thing and they say, we're going to actively watch and we're going to look for this moment or this time where we can go, aha, so you've done something wrong. We can show you're either immoral, illegal, or incompetent. And then we're going to take that to the king to basically sink your promotion because we don't really like you that much. We feel jealous, right? But as they were looking at Daniel's life, the text says they literally could not find one thing where they went, is he illegal, immoral, or incompetent? They couldn't find it. And in fact, his administration was such a tight ship, right, that things were just thriving underneath it. Now, I want to stop us here and just talk about a couple of principles. How do we live in the messy tension between living out our faith when at times it may seem contrary to either political, legal, or the state's sentiment? All right, because Daniel, keep in mind, is not one who's worshiping Cyrus. He's not one who wanted to see the destruction and all that befell his people and where he is. But Daniel was put into a position to operate within the same structure and kingdom that actually brought him in this mess in the first place. And you might be tempted to assume that Daniel's there to try to secretly undermine, to say, well, I'm going to get whatever I can out of it because I've already been injured in this. Or maybe even that I'm just going to wall off and go, I will have nothing to do with this evil organization. Right? Daniel, in his own choice that he makes, says, I am going to operate with integrity to see those who are around me thrive. And it was very clear from the text. How does Daniel operate in this tension? Well, Daniel operates with integrity, and he's doing his job in the way that God intended, by the way. Not even necessarily Cyrus, but God intended for leadership. Remember we talked a couple chapters ago? The purpose of leaders are to help others thrive underneath them. Daniel takes his cue not from the government who has done so many wrongs against him, but actually from God and what he believes mirrors an integrity and a walk before God that helps those thrive underneath him. And God blesses that. And as these people are jealous, trying to find things to sandbag him, they can't find anything. And so they come to this conclusion: we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. Now, this is how the story continues. Basically, these people in the court, there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of backbiting. I mean, this would have made great reality TV, right? Where you're like watching people scream and stab each other in the back and all that. This is what's happening in the court, a lot of deception. And so they hatch this plan and they say, okay, if we can make this law that the king himself signs and endorses, saying no one is allowed to make a petition or a request to any god, because remember, this is a society that has a whole lot of a pantheon of gods. You can't pray to any of them except the king for 30 days. Not forever, just 30 days is kind of a way to recognize, and king, you want to remind everybody, right? They're here because of your good graces. So let's make this law for just 30 days. Take a break from your thing and pray only to Cyrus himself. And they're doing this because they know that Daniel is not going to comply with this. There is an accommodation that Daniel makes, and he uses his own wisdom, his own spirit of insight to go, I'm going to accommodate here because it doesn't harm my faith or my witness. But they are pretty sure this is going to cross a line for Daniel. And so the king is kind of duped in this, not thinking through the implications. He goes, I mean, people praying to me and remembering how great I am, that sounds pretty good, right? And so he goes ahead and signs it. And the way that laws worked then, not even the king was allowed to change a law that had been put on the books, right? And that strengthens really good laws, but it also exacerbates bad laws. And that's exactly what was happening here. Now, after this is signed, it's clear that whoever doesn't obey this is going to be murdered, and in a horrific way, right? You're going to be tossed into this den of lions if you don't comply with this. And the king signs it. Now, watch what happens with Daniel in verse 10. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, that matters. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. And he got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks to God as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Now, I want to just look at this for a second because I think this is so instructive for us. Daniel knows, right? The text is really clear. It wasn't that just he hadn't caught up on the news, he'd been busy and hadn't checked his email recently. Daniel knew that this had been signed. And you don't see this sort of, I'm sure a lot was going on in his brain, but you don't see this sort of kind of dithering in him. What should I do? What should I not? It's just a pretty direct, when Daniel knew this document had been signed, he went to his house and he continued to do what was already a part of his life. And what I love about this is Daniel really shows a conviction that is deeper than convenience. And church, we absolutely need a conviction that is so far deeper than convenience, because as rules and laws and social mentalities and cultures change, sometimes they go in alignment with what God is calling us to, and sometimes it goes against what God is calling us to. And if our convictions are as deep as it is convenient or profitable for us, We're not going to be able to follow God when these things change. And in fact, we're not really following God at that point, right? What are we following? What seems like is most beneficial for us in any given moment, right? And Daniel exhibits in this tension between state and his personal faith, he actually exhibits a conviction that's so far deeper than just what's convenient. Now, the other thing that's fascinating about this, when it gives this description, right, it says this: when Daniel knew that the documents had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber that were open towards Jerusalem. And he bowed on his knees and 3 times a day gave thanks. Now, this is a little bit of history maybe for us here, a cultural background. That was very unusual. It was very unusual in the style and architecture of the homes at that time to actually have a separate room on top of your house that is built, that has open windows, and that's facing towards a particular direction, right? That's just not commonly what people did. Now, obviously, Daniel had the resources to do something unique and different, to pay the contractors to come out and do that, right? But it was very different. Almost nobody had something like that then. If they did have space on top of their house, it was more just like a lean-to that was put up in case you needed some cool air. It was very different. It was very unique. Not only that, but Daniel's prayer itself. Daniel goes down on knees. Now in the church, we go, yeah, I mean, that's kind of praying. That's what you see in imagery, but that wasn't what prayer looked like back then. That was very uncommon. It was very unusual. And why is the text even telling us this? Because what's really amazing about Daniel is that his life made statements. His life absolutely made statements. His house looked different. It showed his commitments in a very visual and different way. The posture with which he prayed was very different than what anyone else did. Right? Daniel was not what I'll call the undercover Christian. You know, the undercover Christian, where you want to build a relationship with everybody for around 40 years, and then maybe at year 41 you might hint to the fact that you're a Christian. Right? That's kind of what some people do, leaving the track and disappearing before they wake up. That's kind of how we want to live our life. How do I navigate? I disappear. I show nothing about my faith. I show nothing that might make a statement that I have a belief that could be different than yours. I hide, right? Now, Daniel accommodates, and we see that. And Daniel helps the country thrive. But Daniel's also not hiding here. Daniel has literally built a permanent structure that makes a very clear statement. His life makes a statement. Here's a great question for us, church. Does your life make a statement? If someone followed you around, for the time that you're out in public, would they see anything that would lead them to believe that you have a faith in God? Right? Does your life make a statement, or is it hiding? Now, let me also put it on the other end, though. Daniel's life made a statement, but he wasn't making a show, okay? He wasn't living the reality TV show life. It's not like he never really prayed before until he was told he couldn't do it. Then all of a sudden he's super angry and marching up in front of the king and bowing down. And it wasn't reactionary, right? There's some people who are really upset that they can't be inside of a church, but they didn't really come that often when they could, There's some people, it's more about a reaction and because I want to, show my voice. That's not really what Daniel's doing here. Daniel is doing what he consistently did, which was make a statement. He didn't disappear, but he also wasn't trying to make a circus of it either. He doesn't go before the king to protest. He simply continues what he did, which makes a statement. Now, look what they say. They're quite upset at this. They continue on and said, these people who watched Daniel, they run right back to the king. And they say this: then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, shall not be cast in the den of lions? Then the king answered and said, the thing stands fast, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. When we talk about How do you live in this tension, right? Because I highly doubt Daniel felt like, I got the playbook, everything, I know what I'm doing, right? He's trying to live with wisdom in the moment, reacting as situations change. He's there to walk and work in integrity to help things thrive. He's not, he's not just walling himself off. Right? He's living with a conviction that's deeper than convenience. He's operating with a life that's making a statement as to what his beliefs are. And here, I love this. He's actually living in such a way that he has a disregard for false gods. A disregard for false gods. And hear me out when I say this. Right? Daniel's immediate response was not, I am going to go as the second most powerful in the kingdom and get a picket sign, and I'm going to march into the king and say, have you thought about the implications? And now Daniel could have done that. And maybe there's times that he should do that. He obviously had a confrontational message in the last chapter for Belshazzar. But what do we actually see him doing here? He doesn't go and go, king, you need to change the law. He simply disregards it and says, you know what? There is a king above kings. And whenever your laws, whenever your decrees, whenever your things are putting it in tension with the God above, I'm just not going to listen to it. But what was the actual charge? He's not even listening to what you're saying. And Daniel goes, I'm just not going to pay attention to false gods. I'm not necessarily going to go on this big crusade against it. I'm just going to ignore it because there is a ruler and a rule that supersedes what you're saying. And the greatest form of showing that something is not important is not actually fighting against it. It's really just ignoring it and saying, this isn't binding. It doesn't have anything to do with me. I will continue with the king above all kings and what he is calling me to do. Church, we have a lot of false gods. We have a lot of false gods. There's some, I have been in places around the world where the state is really explicit. There can never be a commitment higher than the state. I was in a very restrictive country. I was doing a Bible study with about 20 other people, and we had one Bible in the room. Music was played off of a little recording device. No one sang. And in the middle of it, we had police raid the building and come into the room. The Bible had to be hidden. The tape was shut off. I mean, it was intense, right? There are places in this world today, many, where the state is very explicit. There can be no higher commitment than your commitment to the state or to its leadership. But church, let me just tell you, that still can happen here too, right? Whether it's an official law or a sentiment or an ideal or a political stance where people go, we should have no higher allegiance than to a political idea or to a certain conception of something. And Daniel challenges that and goes, when a false god comes and demands that they be regarded as the highest allegiance and priority, Daniel says, I'm just going to disregard it. I disregard false gods, and I continue in my commitment even when it's not convenient. Now, the king is really upset about this. He realizes he's been duped. He's disturbed. And so he goes in and in verse 16 comes and talks to him. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid at the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and the signet of his lords. Then nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. Then at the break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. And he came near the den where Daniel was. He cried out in a tone of anguish. And the king declared to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to him, O king, live forever. Underline that for me. O king, live forever. May God send his angels and shut the mouth of lions, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm. And we talk about the importance of integrity and helping people thrive, of convictions that are willing to go past convenience, to have a life that makes statements, but then also this as well, a true loyalty. See, here's what really this chapter is about. A group of jealous individuals trying to pit Daniel's faith against the state and make a law that's going to have these two things come into a train wreck. But who's actually loyal here? Was it those other satraps who were working not for the kingdom's interest, not for the king's interest? What? Their own interest. They wanted the promotion, right? They certainly weren't being loyal. The king made a really poor decision, didn't think through the consequences, and just because it fed his own pride, he made that call. Okay, so who was the loyal one? Daniel is actually exhibiting a true loyalty. When he comes out of this, how easy would it have been for Daniel to say, I told you so, or how dare you do this, or why didn't you see this? Daniel actually comes with this amazing posture of still respecting the king and saying, O king, may you live forever. His first words. How is Daniel still loyal? Wouldn't he be so incredibly upset right now? How could you still be loyal? Because Daniel's loyalty is not to that man. Daniel's loyalty is to the King of Kings. And Daniel says, wherever I am placed, I see myself as ultimately under God, and I will do my best to live with wisdom and operate where I'm placed. And that actually allows me to make the right call, even when you, O king, have made the wrong one. When the king is stepping outside of the framework that God has called him to help people thrive and to not make these blasphemous things, Daniel actually does the right thing, the truly loyal thing, which is to obey the call that God has given to all leadership. And in this, Daniel is incredibly loyal. In fact, he's the only loyal person in this entire story to the good of the kingdom. Church, we need a theology that calls us to be loyal, even when it's messy, not to an ideal, a party, but actually to the ideal and the direction of God, the King of Kings. Now, look how we close this. Then Darius wrote to all the people, nations, and languages that dwelt in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall never end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. Look at how we end this chapter. So in this, Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. See, God allowed, Daniel was faithful, God delivered, and then God was praised. You know, church, this chapter isn't about how does Daniel live in a lion's den. This chapter is actually about how does Daniel live in a culture that wants to pit state versus religion, that wants to pit the rules and the ethos and the mentality of those who are in charge or in power with personal convictions, following God's word. That's really what this chapter is about. And you have to ask the question, how could somebody even survive in that situation? But the text says Daniel thrived in it. Daniel actually succeeded again and again. And why? Because there was some playbook. It's exactly this way. Everyone needs to do it that way every time. No, that's not the point. But Daniel was a person of wisdom who exhibited this amazing integrity and commitment to operating as God would call him to, not simply his role, but how to see people thrive. He had a conviction that was willing to continue in inconvenient times, right? He had a life that was evangelistic in the sense it made statements. He looked different. He had different things about him that he actually had a disregard for false gods, things that say, I demand your loyalty above your faith. And at the end, he had this sort of true loyalty, not to a person, not to a king, but to the King of Kings. Church, as we wade through a messy time, difficult, challenging, lots of unknowns, changing quickly, may we be a people who have wisdom, the wisdom of Daniel to navigate it so well and in such a way that we don't just survive, but we thrive together as God's family as we worship and follow the King of Kings. May it be true of us this week. Amen.